described as a political masterclass, ending a prime minister's credibility in less than 15 minutes. No shouting, no theatrics, just precision, facts, and composure. Inside the House of Commons, MP Kemi Badenoch rose with a single objective: to expose a cover-up that strikes at the core of Britain's political establishment. A collapsed spy case, vanishing evidence, and a government that suddenly can't recall its own words about China. What unfolded was less a debate and more a forensic dismantling of authority. Before we unpack the sequence, a quick note. If you want political analysis that cuts through the noise and shows you what's actually happening behind Westminster's walls, make sure you subscribe. It helps this channel keep independent reporting alive. Done? Good. Let's break it down. Here's the backdrop. 2 individuals were charged with spying on British MPs for China. The evidence was reportedly solid. MI5 was involved, charges were laid, and the national security implications were serious. Then, without warning, the entire case collapsed. The government's explanation? Vague, defensive, unconvincing. But Kemi Badenoch came armed, with documents, timelines, and official statements that would make any attempt at evasion impossible. What followed was the political equivalent of a public dissection. The session began on a solemn note, a moment of silence for Sir David Amess, the MP murdered in 2021. A sobering reminder that threats to Parliament are not abstract. They're matters of life and death, which is precisely why this failed spy prosecution carries such weight. Badenoch wastes no time. She turns directly to the Prime Minister. Why did this case collapse? How could the government fail to provide prosecutors with the evidence they needed? The Prime Minister's answer is tepid. He shrugs off responsibility, saying the evidence was submitted under the previous administration, implying it's not his problem. But Badenoch isn't here for political deflection. She's here for accountability. Her first point is sharp. In 2021, the UK's Integrated Review officially identified China as the greatest state-based threat to Britain's economic security. That's not an opinion. That's government policy. Then comes her second blow. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 publicly labeled China a threat, on record, on camera. So if every relevant authority recognized the danger, and if the evidence existed, why did the prosecution crumble? Pivot, arguing that previous governments avoided using the word enemy to describe China, even quoting a former foreign secretary who called it impractical and unwise to do so. But Badenoch is unshaken. She counters with another citation, this time from the current opposition leader, who in 2023 said, "We should not be describing China as a foe." Then she reminds the chamber that the Prime Minister himself once admitted, "I have shied away from calling China a threat." That's the turning point. The tension in the Commons shifts. MPs lean forward. The issue is no longer partisan, it's systemic. Both major parties softened their stance on China, and now a national security case has collapsed because of that reluctance. Sensing the pressure, the Prime Minister insists his words were taken out of context. He claims that, when read in full, he did describe China as a threat. Badenoch's reply is calm, almost surgical. You can read the beginning of that quote all you want, but those spies were charged under a conservative government, and they were released under Labour. You still haven't answered the question. The chamber falls silent. The Prime Minister has no response. And in that silence, lasting only a few seconds, reputations crumble. And then, Kemi Badenoch drops the bombshell, the moment that changes the entire tone of the debate. She cites a report from the Sunday Times, which claims that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's own national security advisor, convened a secret meeting to discuss the fallout from the China spy trial. Her question is direct, cutting through the chamber's tension. Did that meeting happen? Or is the Sunday Times fabricating the story? The room falls silent. Every MP knows this is the moment that matters. The Prime Minister hesitates, carefully choosing his words. He admits there was indeed a meeting in September, but insists that the National Security Advisor did not discuss any evidence related to the trial. Badenoch presses further. If the meeting occurred, who attended? What was discussed? And why, she asks, does the Security Minister claim that only the Deputy National Security Advisor had full autonomy over this critical decision? The Prime Minister doubles down. No ministers were involved, no political advisors, just the deputy, acting independently. Stillness. Is the government really suggesting that a single official acted alone in one of the most consequential national security failures in recent history? Did he not consult the National Security Advisor, the Home Secretary, anyone in Downing Street? The disbelief in her tone reflects what everyone in the room is thinking. The story doesn't add up. Then she lays out the facts with prosecutorial precision. The charges against the alleged spies were filed in April 2024. The Crown Prosecution Service confirmed the evidence was solid, and the decision to charge was correct. The case was progressing until the new government took office. Then abruptly, the prosecution collapsed. The CPS later stated they were satisfied with the evidence and stood by their original decision to prosecute. So what changed? Badenoch demands clarity. The charges were brought under us, she says. The case collapsed under them. What changed in between? The Prime Minister promises transparency. He vows to publish the witness statements, to release all relevant documents, but not today. He insists due process must be followed, that individuals mentioned must first be notified. Badenoch isn't convinced. Her reply is immediate and relentless. If there's nothing to hide, publish the statements today. Release the meeting minutes. Make public all correspondence with the CPS. Show the country everything. The delay, she implies, reeks of evasion. Then the Prime Minister makes a fatal political error. Frustrated, he attacks her personally, claiming she's not a lawyer and not a leader. It's a cheap shot, and it backfires instantly. MPs erupt. The chamber fills with shouts of outrage. Personal attacks in Parliament are legal, but they're always a sign of weakness. Badenoch remains composed. She doesn't rise to the insult. Instead, she turns the knife. Calmly, she reminds the House that this Prime Minister recently defended someone with ties to a convicted pedophile. Her line is brutal. Forgive us if we don't trust a word you say. The impact is seismic. The Prime Minister's authority visibly wavers. His credibility, already fragile, takes a direct hit. And still, Badenoch isn't done. This, she declares, stinks of a cover-up. The Commons explodes. She accuses the government of blaming everyone, civil servants, the media, even their predecessors, but failing to answer the central question. Why did they not supply the evidence prosecutors needed? Then she delivers the accusation that will echo through headlines for weeks. A serious national security case has collapsed because this government is too weak to stand up to China. The chamber is chaos. MPs are shouting. The Prime Minister tries to respond, but his voice is drowned out by the uproar. The narrative is already written. Final devastating question. If the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, what does that say about his ability to protect this country? Silence. The kind of silence that follows when a single sentence cuts deeper than any debate could. There's no comeback, no spin. Just the unmistakable sound of political damage settling in. The Prime Minister sits motionless. His aides are scrambling for damage control, but it's too late. The clip is already out. Within the hour, that moment will be replayed across every news channel, podcast, and social feed in Britain. Kemi Badenoch has just delivered the political equivalent of a checkmate. Let's take a step back and recap what unfolded. A high-stakes espionage case, involving allegations of Chinese spying on British MPs, collapsed under the current government's watch. The Prime Minister attempted to shift blame onto his predecessors, yet official documents show that the previous government had already classified China as a major threat years ago. A secret meeting was reportedly convened, but no one in government seems willing to explain what was discussed or who attended. When pressed for transparency, the response wasn't clarity. It was delay. Kemi Badenoch came prepared. With a detailed timeline, government statements, and a firm grasp of the facts, she dismantled the government's narrative point by point. Her questioning exposed contradictions, her tone demanded accountability, and her closing line, calm, cutting, and perfectly timed, will be remembered as a defining moment in this government's ongoing struggle with national security credibility. This wasn't a debate. It was a dissection, clinical, methodical, and merciless. And today, the Prime Minister learned what happens when you step into Parliament without answers. If you want more political breakdowns that cut through spin and show you what's really happening behind the scenes, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment below. But here's the real question. Was Kemi Badenoch right to call this a cover-up, or was it calculated political theater? That's up for debate. What isn't? is this. In British politics, civility doesn't equal weakness. And today, someone found that out the hard way.